Greetings, nerds. This is Name of Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well, Sarah. How are you doing?
Doing fine. Fine.
You're just doing fine?
Just doing fine, because we're recording, and it's not like we haven't tried to record this episode at least twice, if not more, by now.
That's true.
It's not deja vu at all. It's not bothering me. I'm happy we're here recording again, and we have a special guest who has to do this with us again. Poor thing, holding in here like a trooper. We have Jackie back.
Hello.
Hey, Jackie.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Thank you for coming back and joining us again after all our technical snafus, but
No worries, guys. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, you poor thing. Third time.
Third time's the charm, y'all.
The sad part about this is there's bits of the first recording that I wish were in the second, and now there's bits of the second recording I wish will be in this one, but I'm also a type of person, I hate to redo the same thing every time. So this is what we're gonna get.
It is what it is. That's all right. I mean, I get tired of doing the same thing over and over again as an actor, so
yeah.
Don't
you have to do things like sit down, like they like tell you to walk into the room and then walk back out and then walk in?
Yeah.
Right?
Every scene that we do, every setup, I should say not even scene, every camera setup is probably done at least minimum 2 times, most likely about 4 times. If you screw up, more than that for sure. So if you're doing like 3 different setups for a scene, let's say as a conversation, you got both people on one side and then you got a close up on one and close up on another, you're talking anywhere from like 6 to 15 times that you're doing that same scene over and over again.
But not if you're on a soap opera.
Not if you're on a soap. Well, you hope to do it that many times, but I don't know. Soap operas are so quick. They film so fast. It's just you film as many times as you have time to film.
Yeah, because you have experience on those. Because I was listening the last 2 times.
I know. I feel like we need to bring the audience up to speed because now we've got our own conversations.
We did. Yeah.
Okay, let me bring the audience up to speed. Will watches soap operas. Newsflash. Love it.
So Jackie was on a soap opera that was one of my favorites back in the day called The Bold and the Beautiful.
Yeah. It's like 37 seasons now or something.
Gosh, is it that many? I guess
yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy. I think General Hospital has been going on for like 6 years.
True.
Yeah.
So I guess it's still an infant compared to General Hospital.
Yeah. I just don't know how everyone keeps up with it because, like going along with the whole filming so rapidly, there's a new episode every single day. It's not like a once a week episodic sort of series. Most TV shows spend a week per episode filming, but this is like you're filming 30 minutes worth of material in one day. So yeah, it's super fast.
How is TV shooting different than movie shooting?
Say typically, like I said, like a 30-minute episode usually has about a week to film. So on like a 5 or sometimes a 6-day work week, you go through about anywhere from 3 to 7 pages a day. Same with film. If you've got a feature-length movie, they've got anywhere from like 1 to 3 months to shoot this film. So you're going at a pace of pretty much like 3 to 7 pages a day is ideal. On a soap opera, because you're going through a 30-minute episode a day, you're literally filming 30 pages a day. So we're filming 3, 4, 5. Math is really hard right now. Really fast. A lot faster.
So, okay, what about a short film? Because you have experience with short films now.
Yeah, so a short film, because it's obviously significantly shorter than a feature. It's going to take less time, but the whole page count thing doesn't necessarily correlate. So one of the things about a feature that you can do is you film out of order. You film pretty much all the same locations at a time. So, you would film maybe 7 pages worth of, let's say, 7 different one-page scenes over the course of that day. With a short film, you might only have 1 or 2 scenes that take place at that location. So you have to factor in time for moving to another location, setting up all the equipment, breaking it down, packing it up, driving over. So a short film like the one that I just shot called Proud is only 8 pages, probably going to be about 10 minutes long at its final, its finished copy. But we spent 3 days filming that because we had to shoot at 10 different locations.
Wow.
Yeah.
8 pages.
3 full 12-hour days. So, yeah.
And you wrote it, right?
I did. I wrote it. Yeah. This is my little pet project that I'm super excited about. My first time writing, so I'm really nervous about that.
How long did it take you to write the 8 pages?
Well, actually sitting down and writing it took a couple hours. I'd say it took a day. It was one of those weird, I had this idea bouncing around in my brain after watching Crazy Rich Asians, and I literally had a moment of manic inspiration. I woke up and actually I never went to sleep. I was 2 in the morning. I was on Twitter and I was like, oh my gosh, I have this idea. I need to write it down before I fall asleep because, you wake up the next day and I don't know, it's gone. Half your thoughts are gone. So I literally just got out of bed at 2 in the morning and I was writing until probably 7 or 8.
Wow.
I got the first draft of the script down, went to sleep, took a nap, woke up, reread it just to I don't know, see if it sucked. And because you never know, 2 a.m. delirium. Yeah.
Is that what they call the suck test? And how do you know? Do you say it out loud? Because I imagine you're probably your worst critic. So
oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So once you finish the first couple of drafts, what was the next step? Who did you show it to, and how did it sort of evolve from however many page draft to
right
to hey, I'm going to make a film out of this.
I have a really good this is a good thing. I have a really good honest relationship with my husband and my sister, so I show them everything. Because I know they're at least going to be Jackie, this is not your best work, or encourage me if they believe in it. So I can always count on them to give me very unfiltered criticisms. So I had them read it, and they both weighed in. My husband is not Asian, but he knows me very well, so he gave me any critiques and feedback from a non-Asian perspective. And then my sister, obviously she's Asian, and she had a very similar growing up experience as me, so she gave me her feedback. And then once I felt comfortable, forget the screenwriting part because neither of them are in the industry, but once I felt comfortable with the story, then I passed it along to some of my trusted film industry people who have written scripts before, directed or produced, people whose professional opinions I respect and trust, to help me get it formatted in a screenwriting format as opposed to just mental verbal vomit. So that's ultimately what we ended up with. And the final count was 8 pages. Yeah. Like I said, I'm a little nervous about it, but I feel like people liked it, so I'm gonna just accept that and
tell us a little bit about it, because you said you were inspired by Crazy Rich Asians, but what about that film inspired you, and was your experience similar to what was portrayed in the film, or different? You were inspired enough to do a all-nighter to write this story.
Yeah, so Crazy Rich Asians was so important in so many ways, right? It's an Asian American film. It's depicting us in mainstream Hollywood blockbuster, box office hit movie, and that's long overdue. There's been a lot of talk about diversity and inclusion and representation in Hollywood, so this is a really, really, really big step for us as Asian actors. I really love what it's done as far as this movement goes. As far as, relating to it, I mean, it's a really good rom-com. I enjoyed watching it, but I don't know about the relatability because, it's about a very, very specific top 1% subset of an Asian population, and it still takes place overseas, even though the main character played by Constance Wu, even though she's Asian American and identifiable, she basically enters this fairy tale world that rom-coms allow you to have, and that is it's fantasy, So while I was very inspired by the movement and what this movie stood for, I almost felt like it didn't represent me because I don't know what it's like to be that super ultra rich. I wish I did. But I kind of wanted more of a story about, more of a fresh off the boat kind of story, because that is very much my childhood, growing up in the 90s in Central Florida, which is exactly what happened. So I wanted to tell a story kind of more based in that vein of reality as opposed to a crazy rich, I
like that. I'd rather have the fresh off the boat rather than the crazy rich. I like how that's like the extremes. That's the spectrum we're working with. It's great.
Right. Yeah, just for the middle. My short film is somewhere in the middle.
Well, it's an interesting
crazy middle class Asians.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you bring up relatability, and I think that's something that I'm not sure is being brought up enough during the talks about trying to have more representation, because you can have a lot of representation, but if the characters aren't relatable to the audience that you're targeting by including them, then really at the end of the day, what's the point?
Right, exactly. And that's a conversation that, as an Asian actress, a lot of the roles that I've gone out for, especially on network television, these small co-star roles, they're meant to be just side characters, right? We were just cast to kind of fill in the pieces of, the main characters' day to day. So as an Asian, I've gone out for, nail salon owner. I've gone out for, convenience store worker, heavily accented characters, dry cleaners.
So is that more about the push to have more diversity behind the camera? Because, and I think we've talked about this on the show previously, that I've always pointed out that I can tell a difference when there's a male writer versus a female writer on the screen, and the characters they come off differently. And I'm always curious, to have take the same script and have a male write it versus a female, and see the differences that get brought to life on screen. I think that's a very interesting experiment to one day do.
Yeah, for sure. I think you're right. You're absolutely right. There's different nuances, that, let's give you one example. Casting breakdowns from an actor's perspective. I can definitely tell when the casting breakdown is written by a woman versus when the casting is written by a guy. When it's written by a woman, we tend to characterize personality traits and depth of character, like three-dimensionalness of the character in the breakdown. We're looking for a tough girl who has endured this in their past and needs to overcome this. Like some sort of, I guess, like an background story of the character. Whereas when I read casting breakdowns written by guys, a lot of it is very just physical trait based, and and they love to use descriptors like she's unconventionally pretty, or she's quirky but cute. Not the type of girl that you would normally notice, but for some reason she catches your eye. Like those are the kind of descriptors that I read when it's like a male person writing it. Yeah,
it takes off her glasses and everything changes.
So yeah, I can tell that too, for sure.
I love that. I never thought about that before, but that makes total sense. It's just so sad. Oh my god. So your movie is called Proud. Since we spent so much time talking about really the process and other nuances, what about the story itself do you want to share with our listeners?
I'd love to share. So, Proud is a short film that's kind of a biographical. It's inspired by true events of my life. It's about Lena. She's the main character. She's an Asian American, and the story follows her journey going home, going from an Asian country, going to a destination, and you kind of see the interactions that she has with the world through her eyes, and it just kind of shows like the passive racism or inadvertent discrimination or just the ignorance, just what it's like to be Asian American, be constantly seen as a foreigner, even though you're born and raised here, and kind of her journey learning to grasp that concept, like trying to learn to embrace her heritage of being Asian while trying to find her identity as an American. It's tough because I grew up in a small town in Florida where there were no other Asians, no other Asian Americans. I was the only Asian student in my elementary school, in my middle school, and in my high school, and I didn't really meet other Asians until I went to college. So I didn't have representation in life. People always say, "Oh, you need representation in film." Well, I didn't have that either. I had Jackie Chan growing up, but I didn't have any Asian influences in my life, period, except for my mom and dad, who really embraced like the American way. So I didn't know how to be Asian, but at the same time, because of society, because I grew up in a small town, and there's a certain mentality that lies with the people that live in those places because of their limited exposure to different cultures. I didn't know how to be really American either, because everyone kept treating me as this perpetual foreigner. So this story is kind of about that. It's just showing all the little interactions that I've had with various people in my life, and yeah, so that's what it is.
So if that's how you felt back then, how do you feel now?
So now I feel compelled to write this story because it's taken me this long to really embrace who I am, to become proud of who I am and my ethnic heritage. I think one of the journeys that this film shows is how, as a child, growing up in this sort of environment, when you're young and you're a teenager and you're impressionable, it's like all you want to do is fit in, right? All you want to do is fit in and just be like everyone else and be accepted and, have your friends. And when you're different, and these are things that people point out about you and tease you and bully you, you start to reject those things, right? So I went through this phase where I was so embarrassed of being Asian, and I just couldn't understand why I was different, and I didn't see other people like me, so I couldn't find anyone to relate to. I really felt that these were like just, completely, utterly unique experiences. Like no one understands me. But yeah, I definitely went through this phase where I hated being Asian and I rejected it and I rebuked it and I wanted to be the cool girl. I wanted to be like, oh, I'm not one of those Asians, or, just, oh gosh, it's like so awkward trying to say it, but, yeah, it wasn't until I became an adult and I met other Asians and they were cool and they were like, had the same experiences that I did. That's kind of when I learned to embrace my differences. And,
How did you, as far as, because, there's the Asian American experience, but there's also the Asian, kids like you who grew up here in the States versus, especially when you got to college, where you probably met folks who were international students who came here. How did you deal with that intersection of, you coming from small town Florida versus someone coming from, say, Korea or Japan or something who was quote unquote Asian versus, Asian American?
Right. Well, that's the whole thing about, trying to get this whole like representation of my type of Asian out there. We really come from completely different worlds, even I have cousins that still live in Korea and they come over here for either, their master's program or their graduate studies or whatever. They really are different. Like how do I say this? The way society is structured over there is different. The way interactions are, it's different. I'm not sure I'm articulating this very well.
Hard question, Will.
Well, I know it's a hard question, and I just think through my wife's experience, like, she's ethnic Indian, but she's actually from Malaysia and then went to college here in the States, and so her interactions with people, they just assume certain things about her because she's Indian. But when you start talking to her whole cultural experience is completely different from folks who grew up here in the States or even folks from India. So
right, yeah, no, it's completely different because think of it this way: like you can imagine if you went to Seoul and you just got dropped off there, right? And you had to spend a year living there. There would be a lot that you would have to get acclimated to because it's different. It's a different lifestyle. Language barrier aside, the food is different, the customs are different, the way you dress is different, the type of music you listen to is different, the things that people do for social fun is different, what's considered good, what's considered bad, acceptable behavior versus disrespectful behavior. All of that is very different. And I grew up not with that. And yet, even though I grew up here in America, where our, cultures and customs are what they are, I'm almost perpetually being asked what it's like being here, and I'm like, I've always been here.
Well, I have to ask. So did you have tiger Asian parents?
Oh gosh.
Wait, what? I haven't heard this thing before. What is that?
Tiger mom? You've never heard that term?
No. I've heard tiger mom, but I've never heard like the Asian stereotype being added on to that. Really?
I think tiger mom is always Asian. My parents are so wonderfully adaptive. My dad moved to America when he was, I want to say around 13 years old. So he was, he was first generation Asian American. He grew up listening to the Beatles. I think he had a bowl cut at one point in time. He had posters of Farrah Fawcett on his wall. Like, oh my gosh, I hope he's not listening to this. But my mom, she moved here when she was actually pregnant with me because my dad went back to Korea for medical school and that's where they met. And so he was like, come back to America. This is where I live. And she was like, oh, that sounds great. So they moved here and she was actively pregnant with me. So she was very much still international, I would say. But both of my parents fully embraced moving to America and embraced the American culture. Even when it didn't necessarily embrace them, they wanted to learn English. They were adamant about living in, not like a Chinatown sort of area. They wanted to assimilate and, kind of like start this American life. So my sister and I, we have American names. We don't have Asian names. So Jackie is actually Jacqueline. Jacqueline is the name that's on my birth certificate. My sister's name is Catherine. I always make fun of my mom because she just moved to America and she picked like the longest American names for us. So it was funny to me because it took me a while to learn how to spell my name too. There's like a Q in there. I don't know.
I never thought about that in the sense that when the parents, they come over here and they're not really from America originally, in a form of assimilation would be that they would then name their kids traditional American names as opposed to names that if the children had been born wherever they were originally from, then they would have picked more traditional forms for that area. Sorry, I'm like a traditional American over here. This is like totally, and I'll put something out here because I'm always envious of people, individuals who have strong cultural ties to a culture and to other specific race of people, because I don't have that. I don't really have any like significant ethnic. I'm a mutt. I'm just an American, and it's just and to me I'm always envious of it because I think it's so cool to have those traditionals and to have those traditions and to be able to say this is my heritage, this is where I'm from, this is my family background, and you're able to trace it like that. And my family has never been that way. I just go around and I'm like, I'm a Belmont, that's about it. No, we're not talking about the horse racers. No. So yeah, continue.
Different perspective, like you say that you feel that way, but it's almost one of those grass is greener things, because when I was growing up, all I wanted was to be white, all I wanted was to be Caucasian, or any other minority where there was like other people like me, I think that's one of the things that's kind of complicated about the Asian American experience. I mean, if you grew up in a diverse metropolitan city like San Francisco or Los Angeles or New York, then sure, you're going to have a community of Asians surrounding you. But for me, where I grew up, my black friends had black friends, my Hispanic friends had Hispanic friends. I was the only one. So even though like talks of racism or discrimination would come up, I didn't really have anyone who could relate to me or that I could relate to and share that experience. And I feel like there's a lot of Asian Americans that do grow up in that sort of cultural isolation if they grew up in a small town.
This here, just thinking about this here and talking about this conversation, that I've been able to see some posting pictures on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook as far as the filming of your project, and see sort of some of the things that we're discussing here tonight shown in those still photos of your experience. And I'm really excited to see this project when it's finished.
Thank you.
And hearing the more context behind them, it sounds like a very deep film.
So if anyone wants to see the photos that Will is talking about, we do have an Instagram account. It's under Proud Short Film. We also have a Twitter account, which is Proud Short Film, and a Facebook page. But I think most of our information can actually be found at our Seed and Spark campaign, where we have a demo video, kind of a behind the scenes. We've got tons of photos as well as updates on the project as we go. And that is seedandspark.com/fund/proud-short-film. We've been very, very fortunate with an outpouring of support from the community and from the Seed and Spark audience. We've actually hit our financial goal for this film, which is fantastic. But if anyone is interested, following along on our Seed and Spark account would be really helpful too, because they actually have a bunch of filmmaker perks and incentives based on the popularity of the film. So if we hit like 250 followers, we get to unlock certain perks. If we hit 500 followers, that too. So if you are unable to, show any support financially, which is totally fine. We're all filmmakers. We're all broke. Just giving us a follow on that account is really helpful for us as well. And if anyone wants to see it, there is a low perk which allows you to get a link to the film when it's completed. I think it's $10, which is not so bad.
Great. So what?
A low perk?
Oh, what's that? It's a not a lot of money perk.
What's a high perk?
It goes up to $1,000 if you want to be listed as an executive producer. And then we have various levels in between where you can get like a proud shirt, you can get like a proud necklace. We have a couple of little cute custom stuff on there. People can peruse through. So
I just had a 90s, or not the 90s, early 2000s flashback from the Disney Channel and the Proud Family. So you're like, you can get a Proud shirt, and I'm like, the Proud Family.
So I know you can get the link if you're a certain level contributor, but as far as your distribution plan for the film, where do you hope to share it?
So the main reason that I wanted to make this film right now is for the HBO Asian Pacific Visionaries competition. It's this wonderful program that is aiming to increase diversity of specifically Asian Pacific directors. HBO has a number of these programs throughout the year for different groups, and this one happens to be the Asian one. So I kind of jumped on the bandwagon for that. The deadline for that is November 15th. So we just wrapped on our production this past Monday. 3 very, very crazy days of filming. Now it's with our editor, and once we submit it to HBO, I think they're going to let us know in February what they decide to do with it, whether they decide to accept it or not. If they do decide to accept it, then that's awesome, and you guys will be able to see it on HBO. If they don't decide to accept it, I'm going to start submitting it to all the film festivals I can possibly afford to submit to, and hopefully get it out there so that as many people can see it as possible. It's tricky with short films because it's hard to find like a massive distribution platform. It's not like a movie, like a feature-length movie where you can sell DVDs and take it to theaters. Short films tend to have a little bit more of a limited release, but that's why I'm kind of hoping that everyone who wants to see it can, sign up for the perk where they can get the link and see it that way, or go to a film festival. Hopefully we get accepted to them. I'm pretty optimistic though. I'm feeling really good about it. I'm super, super ecstatic. The shoot went really well. I have a fantastic team. Everyone really put their heart, soul into it. And I think we have something really amazing.
Well, crazier things have happened, like the Venom box office, so I'm sure that it'll be a success, because these days everybody will just wants content.
Yeah.
Oh God, did you hear about this, Jackie?
No, what happened?
So Venom made $32.7 million in its first day, and the projections are for it to be the biggest October box opening of all time if it goes the full 80 million, which it's projected to be at.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Yeah. Well, I guess everybody gives them a collective middle finger to Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah. Well, that kind of makes me happy. I'm kind of happy that this movie is doing well. I kind of root for anything in the Marvel universe now. So
yeah, I heard something about Michelle Williams' character, and I love Michelle Williams, and and something that alludes to a sequel and her being very critical to that sequel. So whoever her character is, if this does get a sequel, then I'm excited for her.
Have you guys seen it yet, or no?
No, not yet.
I plan on it though.
Yeah, it's next on my list.
Yeah, it's on my list, and I know this weekend was like New York Comic Con too. So I know you've been on the Comic Con circuit. Tell us what that is like. As an artist, I mean, I've been there to a few as a fan, but what's it like to be on your side of the table?
It's really awesome and really weird. I get invited to go to Comic Cons pretty much only because of my appearance on Stranger Things, which became a cult phenomenon a few years back. But it's so like I don't know. My day to day is so boring and so like normal, and all of a sudden I like sit behind this table with this big poster with my face on it, and people ask to come up and like take photos and I don't know. It's just I don't know if I'll ever get used to that, but it's really really cool because you get to meet so many different people who are affected by a project that you were a part of, and you know they it's just kind of really cool seeing it from that perspective. You know, to know that you're a part of something that's really really great. I think that's something that all actors, all performers, maybe all people in general, like we all kind of aspire and dream to be a part of something big. And it's kind of neat just having been a part of that ride. So, and it also kind of gives me a platform to meet people, meet fans, meet people who I could potentially tell about my other projects coming up, you know. And it gives me a good platform for that, which I really appreciate because I know I've been really, really lucky and fortunate and blessed in that. I know a lot of actors who have been at this a lot longer than me, and you know, I think a lot of them are more talented, and it's just a lot of it comes down to luck. You know, it really does. A lot of it really comes down to being at the right place at the right time and just getting that one opportunity that you don't even know is going to be a big opportunity until it is.
Yeah. Speaking of projects, didn't you just have a feature film to drop?
I did, yeah. So there's a horror film called The Hiding that we just had the premiere this past Sunday. It's a horror film. It's kind of a supernatural cop thriller. Tom Sizemore's in it. Miguel Munoz Jr. is in it. I'm in it. It's a supernatural horror, I would say.
You sound like you're being modest. Didn't you have a pretty substantial role, or?
So I played Detective Harris. She is the lead detective of the case, and she's trying to figure everything out. So I had a lead role in this, which I was really nervous about, guys. This is my first lead role in a feature film, so it's the first time I'm having to carry something, and I hadn't seen the film before the screening, so I saw it at the same time as everyone else, and I love the production company and the director, Eduardo Castrilla. I've worked with him before numerous times. I have the utmost faith and trust in him and his crew, but at the same time I was just so nervous. But we had a full house and we got great reviews afterwards, and people seemed to genuinely like it. It was a little funnier than I expected. As a horror, I was like, wow, they had really good timing, comedic timing. So added a little bit of lightheartedness amidst the suspense and scariness. It was a really cool experience.
All right. Well, Jackie, now that we know where to see you in the near future, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Sure. So I am on Instagram and on Twitter at Jax Dallas, JaxDallas. I'm on Facebook, Jackie Dallas. IMDb. Everything's Jackie Dallas. There's only one of me.
I feel like IMDb should have like a jingle after it. IMDb. Will, where can people send you hate mail?
You can send me all your hate mail at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOL.
You can find me at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew at Scene and Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, but most importantly, rate, subscribe, and comment on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Spotify. Good night, geek out. You're welcome.